Welcome back to the Master Jeweler Man channel, where I teach you to become a beginner jeweler all the way to a master. Today I'm going to teach you about one of these really cool pendant pieces that I've made, nicknamed Spearhead. It actually looks like a face, and I made it from this solid piece of rectangle wire, and I say wire because that's what they claim it as, but it's more like stock. So I'm going to do a little bit of movie magic here too and make it kind of quick. Just to show you how long this is going to take. Alexa, time?
It's 2:33 p.m.
So there you go. It's 2:33 p.m. and we're starting today. Let's just see how this goes. So basically, you're going to want to start with at least a sheet of paper. And this is for a lot of designs. You're going to want to do a piece of paper. And what I'm going to do is actually lay it down, and then I'm going to trace with a fine point Sharpie the actual piece itself, of material. And then at some point I'm actually going to take, little measuring pieces and measure out. And then once I basically divvy out what I want, and then I'm going to use scissors, obviously, but I'm going to just freehand this here to show you. So, say I cut this out, voila, movie magic. Here we go, we've got our pieces. Now, we're going to rotate two of them, and then we're basically going to put them together and make our actual piece. Oh, let me get it on this edge. Sorry. So we're going to make our piece, and that's pretty much the basic design shape of our actual spearhead. As you can see right here, it's pretty damn close. At this point, you're going to start with this, and you're going to use this piece that I was telling you about with angles and different pieces, 90 degree perfectly. Now once you get the actual angles down onto the paper, you're actually going to want to transfer them onto the piece of metal. So say for example here that we've got our angle that we want for our cut. Basically you're going to take that and transfer it over, and I've actually cut a piece of this off, pretense. So I've already started, so this is going to be the upper piece, which is this section here. And then this is the lower piece, which is this section here. So we're going to do a little bit of movie magic here, and I'm going to take this and finish cutting this out, and then I'm going to actually show you from there what I'm going to do. Okay, now that I pretty much got a little bit of this started, I'm going to show you how to mark it. We could just use a flat piece like this, and what you're going to want to do is put it on the very edge on one side and then the very edge on the other. And we remember our bead reamer, which is one of those handy tools. You're going to want to scribe right on the line, just like that, so you're on the line. And then the same thing on this. You're going to want to line it up right there and line it up right there, and then you're going to scribe. So now that we've got our let me see if I can get this to focus. Now that we got our line, all we're going to do is basically start on one edge and the other, and then start sawing. I've already actually started it, and what I'm going to do is finish this and cut our pieces just like our paper. So once these two pieces are actually cut down, I'm actually going to show you from this point the different materials that we're going to use. Starting with, this is a triangle wire that is very small, and then we've got a more medium, and then I actually for the one piece here, it's still triangle wire, but it's the biggest they make, so that's the bridge piece. But instead of using triangle wire this time, we're going to use something like this, and it's basically square tube, and you can see there's a hole that goes all the way through, and this is tubing and it's square. So I actually cut a piece off, and when I cut that piece off, one of the ends I actually filed down. And when you do your filing, as you can see, it comes to a point, and that's what's going to be the nose piece. But when you do your filing, you want to do the same exact movements over and over and over, but you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, all the way up to like 50, 51. Okay, flip it over, 1, 2, 3. So you can get fairly close on both sides just by the movements and counts. You know, it's going to cut the same amount no matter what. So we're going to transform this into the 4 pieces, and then we're going to take this and then go from there. So, okay, that was pretty quick. Not really. But now that we've got our pieces separated, as you can see here, basically what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange this back to back, you know, and basically get our actual shape of what we want to make, which is exactly what this is. Now, it's going to be kind of hard for you to get things exact perfect, especially when you're soldering. So you're going to want to use like a buffer, and basically what I've chosen. Now, there's different things you can use. Say this 18 gauge wire versus 16 gauge wire, and how you can tell is pretty much 18 gauge is 1 millimeter thick, and 16 gauge is 1.2 millimeter thick. But I've actually found some square wire, and this is completely square, but it's small, and it's uniformed. Now, square doesn't roll around or move, so basically when we put this thing down and we push it, it's going to be cut into pieces, and it's going to be our little marker on each one of these corners, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and probably a little in the middle too. And it's going to keep this completely uniformed, separated together, exactly how we want it, while we take our one piece that is going to be our nose piece, and that's going to be cut and put into shape like this. And as you can see from here, it's actually, here, let me move this around, it's actually looking very, very cool so far. We haven't even refined it or done any of the edges or anything, and we're only going to put this on one side. As you can tell on my piece here, I have it on both sides, and let me tell you right now, it's extremely difficult to get this and that soldered into place perfectly even and perfectly straight. I've actually put a gold tip here, and this is gold wire, and we're gonna finish this out, this piece right here, and we're gonna show you how to take it, you know, obviously, like I was saying, from this to that. So as far as you can tell right now, all I've done is taken my pieces, drawed lines with my scribe, and then basically just used my saw. And just so you know, I've actually broken 9 saw blades in the process. So don't feel bad if you break a blade, or 5 or 10, because it's going to take you quite a bit to saw through this. I mean, this is almost 1/4 inch thick silver, and it's 925, not pure. So it's a little bit harder, and it takes a lot. Now, you can design this piece any way you want. You don't have to follow my exact direction, but the way that I've done this is pretty cool, pretty standard, you know. I mean, I could even show you how to draw or drill a hole through here and make this piece where it's movable. You don't really want pieces that move. So we're going to take this right now, and we're actually going to bring it over to the bench, and we're going to start soldering. Okay, I've actually moved it over to the bench. Excuse the rain, because it is raining. So you can see here I've got the 1 piece, the 2 piece, the 3 piece, and the 4 piece that I've cut, and then a 5th in the middle. And then I've basically just tried to square this up as best as I can, and you want to get it as close as you can to square and push together. So this is basically our shape that we're going to do. Now we're going to take this piece, and we're actually going to apply the solder to both sides of the edge. And that's the piece that we're going to put the solder on, and then we're going to lay it on here with some flux. And we're not going to heat this piece at all. We're going to heat everything else, and we're going to use a fairly large flame, because silver does absorb a lot of heat. even though it dissipates it too, but it absorbs a lot of heat. And you'll notice here that I'm actually using my brass tweezers here, because this is what we're going to want. We don't want to transfer the heat to the tweezers. If you use stainless and titanium, it will actually transfer more of the heat than brass. Don't ask me why, it's just the physics of things. So let's get started here. Alright, looks like rain's never going to stop. I've actually started with my anti-flux, which I told you guys about, and this is something you're going to want. I've already coated my piece, and remember these tweezers that have the interlocking piece. That's actually really good at grabbing pieces like this. So that's something that you're going to want. I've noticed over a period of time when you use oxygen and propane, the oxygen in the tube will actually break down and it won't work so well. It'll actually take your flame down. So you want to run your oxygen for a few seconds to 20 or 30 seconds before you actually start it up. And I'm going to get this thing positioned as best as I can here. That looks pretty decent there. Alright, and then we're going to start with our flame. We're going to have a fairly about 2-inch flame, and then we're going to bring it down until the yellow disappears, like I was mentioning. It's about right there. Now I'm going to heat this up because this has got the anti-flux on one side and then none on the other. As you can see there, it's yellow here and then not yellow on one side. So now that that's taken care of, I'm actually going to lay this down, and then we're going to take medium solder, which I've already cut 3 pieces off here, and I'm going to put a little bit of flux on 2 areas here, and then we're going to heat this up. So as you see, I got it on one side and the other, and we're just basically going to heat this up. We're going to put it right on the edge. And remember what I said, you're going to want to heat the piece up, not the solder. Heat the piece up. Like I said, I'm sorry for the rain. I can't help that. I'm sure you can still see and understand what's going on. We're going to heat this up like this till it just flowed in. You see it just flowed into the cube here. And that's what we're going to want. We're going to want it to where it literally goes right on the edge. So as you see, as I hold it, it's right on the edge, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to hold it. Let me get my tweezers here. We're going to hold it and actually move the heat up and down the piece, and it's going to flow ever so gently right onto where we want. Now that anti-solder is going to keep that from flowing on the other side. We don't want it to flow on the other side. We want it to flow on that side. So now that that's taken care of, I'm just going to heat this up just quite a bit, not totally hot. And then we're going to start putting flux all up and down the edges here. As you can see, you want to make sure it turns white, like I was talking about before. See, you put it down and so when you first put it down, it may not look white, but as you hit it, it turns white. That's what you're going to want. You're going to want at least the whole entire piece covered, just like so. And you're going to want to make sure it's still square and straight. So I'm going to tap it here a little. We're going to get this thing super square. Here, let me set the torch down. Use my brass pieces. I'm going to bring this in like so. Cut that piece up, bring it over. Alright, that's pretty square. I'm sure anyone would agree with me. That's pretty damn square. So now we're going to take our piece and we're going to lay it ever so gently I'm gonna use my brass ones. Ever so gently, and if your piece moves, that's fine. Just move it back into place. You know, this isn't rocket science. You're not building a rocket to go to NASA. You're basically assembling a piece that you want, and you want it to look fairly square and even, just like so. So now we're going to take this piece, I'm going to lay it ever so gently like that. That's pretty much exactly where I want it. So now that that's taken care of, what we're going to do is we're going to take our oxygen away, and we're going to bring this flame up, and that's about a 6-inch flame. You know, if your tip doesn't, you know, go that way, this is a number 3 tip. If it doesn't quite hold it in, you might have to use a bigger number, like 5 or 6. In fact, you know what? Let me do that. Let me put a number 5 on. Alright, here's a number 5 tip. Like I said, about a 6 to 8-inch flame. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. You're going to want some serious heat flowing through here, because this silver is pretty thick, and we're going to start by just going around the edges until we get that solder to melt into the actual piece itself. And you're going to want your pick handy and some extra solder. I'm only using 1 extra piece because I have confidence that this is going to melt directly into the piece on both sides, and I'm not going to have to use any more solder except for maybe 1 little piece. You're going to want several pieces to begin with as a jeweler. You're not going to be able to just do it with just what you want to begin with. You might have to practice and do this quite often. As you see, it's starting to turn like a yellowish color. Well, maybe you can't see, but it's actually turning a yellowish color, which means that this piece is actually heating up, which is exactly what I want. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time down here on the bottom because it's thicker. And once this thing starts to get heated up to the point where the solder gets to its melting point, that's when you got to work kind of quick, and be careful not to bump your piece with anything, because if you move your piece, it's gonna show it. It's gonna reflect, you know. So as we get this to start to melt, it's getting there. It's really getting there. I'd say about another 10 seconds, it's gonna be pretty much melted into it. Like I said, you don't want to hit the piece itself. You want to go around. You want to heat up the metal you want the solder to adhere to. And as we can see here, it's getting there. It might even take a little bit longer than 10 seconds because it's pretty thick silver. Alright, here we go. Let's get it to go. And don't be afraid to, you know, obviously pull your flame back and put a little bit of flux, and it's going to want to bead off. So you're going to want to be able to, you know, get it to hold like so and get it to flow like that. And you see it sucks it in. That's basically the fluid for the flux to flow on. Usually flux will, if you don't know anything about flux, it basically is like a lubricant for the solder. So if you don't have a flux, your solder is not going to flow the way you want it to. You want it to flow exactly where you want it to go, and flux is the best way to do it. That's why there's also anti-flux. You can see here, maybe not, you can't see here, it's actually flowed on this side. So I'm going to try to get it to heat up and go over here as well. There we go. Alright, now we got to get this to go on this side. There, it's starting to flow. Get it to go over in there. Come on now. There we go. Now it's flowing. Alright, now I'm basically gonna reduce the heat a little, make the flame a little bit bigger, and I'm gonna hit the piece itself. I want it to flow fairly up and down my piece. This is where you can also take a piece of solder and go, well, it's not really flowing right here. Well, guess what? See that flow? See how it just sucked it in? That's what you want. You want it to suck it in and flow it around. So this is pretty much, I'm going to actually take a piece of this solder, put it right there. I'm going to heat this giant piece up because this piece right here, it's not really absorbing, and I want it to go, and you'll watch it about right now. It'll start to melt. As you see, it's starting to melt, and there you go. And you want to kind of use your pick to help move it. You don't want it to just sit in one spot. There we go. Now I'm going to use the flame to actually move it towards where I want it to go. It's not really flowing, so this is where you take your flux, just like so, and you'll notice it will actually flow that solder a lot easier. Heat up the piece, not the soldered piece, but heat up the piece. And we're getting there, It's getting there. Alright, use your pick a little. Get it to flow. Want it to flow in that crack. There we go. There we go. Now it's flown. Alright. Now I'm going to overall heat the piece up just to make sure that the solder has been flowed completely through. And like I said, silver takes an extreme amount of heat to get it to actually flow. So don't be afraid. Now you can melt your pieces down if it's thin. If it's thick like this, you're not going to melt it down whatsoever. It's going to take a lot to melt this silver. It's going to turn red, red, red hot. And I don't know if you can see it. It's going to basically turn shiny. And once it starts to turn shiny, it's pretty much going to start to melt after that point. And the shininess is your tell sign of when something is actually ready to melt and flow or ready to melt down. So we've got this going here. You can see from the pick it's red hot, and it's flown. It's flown down here. And we've pretty much done this. This is done. I'm just making sure that it's completely soldered solid. I don't want this piece to move afterwards. So we'll just go ahead and turn that off. And then what I'm going to do is actually take this and put it in the pickle, and then we're going to clean it up, and we're going to refine it and finish it from this point. Alright, this is sitting in the pickle for a while, and I don't know if you're familiar with pickle, but it actually, what you can see is fire scale. And pickle will remove the fire scale, and I've only let it sit in there for a little bit because I want to continue this video and get this over with, and I can clean all this up myself. But basically, as you can see here, it's completely soldered. You can see the solder, it pretty much goes through. on both sides, except for a little right here. But other than that, this is a solid piece. So we're ready to transform this into this, and it's going to take a little bit of work and effort. And basically what I'm going to do is leave you with this video here because it's already at 25 minutes. And we're going to finish this up on our next tutorial, especially when the rain stops. So, as you can tell, I've been working this whole entire time. Alexa, time.
The time is 3:56 p.m.
So you can see from whatever it was, 2:20 something or 2:30, all the way to 3:56. So we've been working on this whole entire time, even though 25 minutes has gone by on the video. It does take some time to make your pieces, so you can tell that the spacing is absolutely perfect, and that's where these pieces have come in to play. And this is basically the gist of how you're going to get your cool pendant made with, as we started, just a solid piece of silver like this. So we can basically just transform this into something wearable.
Elena?
And then so on our next video, we're actually going to finish this out and make it a finished piece. So expect another 20 to 30 minute video, and please subscribe, and we'll talk to you then.